Hello everyone, welcome back. You're watching Empyrion Galactic Survival episode 191. I'm Nigmius, and today we are continuing, of course, with the Discovery NCC-1031 build, the USS Discovery. And today we're focusing on the front end of the main hull section. We've got the saucer section roughed in. It's waiting the final refinement details whenever we get to that point. And we've done the deflector dish. The now has a proper name deflector dish. It's basically roughed in, and some of the refining is done. We still have to finish off the edge of the dish and do a little bit of work kind of smoothing off the back side of it where it's visible. But other than that, it's in pretty good shape, and I decided that now would be a good time to start roughing in the main hull. And this is where we're departing from the original design, because as I've mentioned countless times throughout this little mini-series, we can't fit the actual proper ship inside the amount of space that we're given. So we have to make some adjustments, and since we're making some adjustments, I decided we might as well give ourselves a little bit of liberty to redesign that central hull area. And then we'll build the supports off of that will hold the nacelles, and the nacelles will be built based on a closer representation of the original, similar to what we did with the saucer section. Try and get it as close to the original as possible. But for now, this is very much experimental building, in the sense that I have a general idea of where I want to go, but I've also got a number of profiles that we've already sort of built in as a part of the process of building in the deflector dish that are there for us to use if we wanted to, and use those as the basis that defines this front profile of the main hull area. So I've decided largely to use those profiles and see where they go. And one of the things that I've found along the way is that there's a few too many changes in direction in the profile for the deflector dish. If we try and carry that over to the front of the main hull, it doesn't look quite right. It looks like there wasn't enough thought given to how the end result would look, I guess, is just the best way I can think of to describe it, because we end up with all of these strange transitions, like this one here. The first area that we started to extend was just a 2-block vertical section in the middle of nowhere for no apparent reason. We didn't have to have it there, so I actually went back and removed it. I didn't make you sit there and watch the process of removing it, but then once we got rid of that vertical section, that put us in a position where we could make a more natural, a more organic looking transition from the top section of the forward part of the main hull and the middle section. So we've got something that I wouldn't necessarily have anticipated as the profile that we're working on now, but it's working for me at this moment in time. And it's just a matter of trying to maintain the transitions between the deflector dish and this front section so that they work. When you look at them, they they make sense, and they don't have too many glaring deficiencies when it comes to trying to find blocks that fit in the spots that are available to us. There's a few times that we'll encounter where it's a little bit difficult to find something that'll fit, but eventually we get something that works. And that's just kind of the nature of this particular kind of process. When I don't have a very specific idea of what it is I'm trying to accomplish, is just a lot of trying to respond to things as we encounter them, and understanding that there's nothing saying that we can't go back and change what we've done, even large sections of what we've done, if I decide that it's just not working. So there's that element as well. It's just a little bit time consuming, which seems a little bit misleading for the way that this thing actually goes together. Looking at it, I wouldn't have expected that it would take as much time as it did to get to the point where we end up. But it's not necessarily something that I say with regret. It was just one of those processes that it took a little while to kind of figure out exactly where everything was going. Now, in terms of the overall design of this main hull section, one thing that I do want to kind of stick to is the fact that it's not an especially complicated design. If you look at it, if you see the original ship, it's a very almost dull sort of design for that central section. It's like the midpoint where all of the interesting things are attached. But by itself, it isn't especially interesting. It's got some things going for it that we aren't really going to be able to duplicate. There's kind of a pattern on the top, if you're looking at it, where you can see it's as though it's got hull plating on top of hull plating, and they're going off at different angles. I wasn't able to find a screenshot in time to show you, but you have to take my word for it. You know, it had some things going on for it, but it wasn't anything that really drew my attention in the grand scheme of things. So when it comes to our design, I kind of want to keep that in mind, is that we don't want it to be too busy. We don't want too much going on. But at the same time, I've already got some ideas to sort of expand on what I've done and do a little bit of refining, just getting it to the point where I look at it and say, okay, well, I'm happy with that. It looks like we did it on purpose. We always do everything on purpose. It's just sometimes they work out and sometimes they don't. But the ones that work out are the ones that have to look like there was a plan. And that's, for me, part of the way I decide whether or not I'm happy with something is if I look at it and it looks like it was done deliberately and not necessarily by fluke. So here we're just extending to build out this front section and trying to use as many of one kind of block as we can before we switch to another kind of block, just to save editing time later on. But it also saves time in the build as well, when you can just kind of pick one block and build with it, cover a large area, and then switch to something else, change the orientation, do whatever you need to do. It's something that I try and do whenever possible. But when we get into the really detailed areas, the smaller bits, trying to make everything fit together, obviously, it's a little bit harder to remember to try and set things up so that they work out that way. Now, this is a part of the design where it's simple enough that I can look at it and say it's a foundation for something that will get better, without necessarily looking at it and saying, yeah, I'm happy with the way that it's going. It's a good start. And I just have to kind of sit down and figure out exactly what I can do to refine it, to make it look a little bit more organic and a little bit more, I guess, advanced in the design, I guess would be one way of describing it. Not necessarily the best way, but one way. And the whole idea here is that right now we've basically got this big sort of front section. It's flat, a lot of flat surfaces, which is not necessarily a bad thing, and it's got a lot of 90-degree edges as well, which to me is kind of a bad thing when I look at it and I think, okay, that's it looks kind of dull. It looks like something that I would have made a couple of years ago. I would prefer something that has a little bit more detail to it, and you can see now we're starting to cut in and get ready to change some of those 90-degree angles. We're going to make it, in this case, 45 degrees. And then from here, we kind of build out with what we can find that fits and get everything taken care of in a way that we can be happy with, and move on and start thinking about either other parts of the main hull or other refinements on this hull. And one of the things that I want to do that we'll be looking at in the next episode is I want to clean up a little bit around the deflector dish and get that, all those transitions in that area taken care of, so that the main hull kind of fits around it the way I originally anticipated that it might. And then I want to look at potentially making some of the angles on this front section a little bit more aggressive, but we'll see. So there's just a minute or so left. You can kind of get an idea of where we finish out after all this is taken care of. Next episode, like I say, we're going to carry on. We're going to do a little bit more work on the front end. We're probably going to start sweeping around toward the sides. There's going to be some details there that I want to preserve from the original. Specifically, there's some light blue strips down the sides that are probably one of the things that I can do that's very, very easy to do, that adds a significant amount of visual interest to the ship and sort of gives a nod to the original design without taking a lot of time to kind of figure out how we're going to make it happen. It's one of the easy things that we can add that makes a lot of sense to have there. So we'll be looking at that and then whatever else we can get done in an episode. So if you want to be notified about that and future episodes in this series and other series, the easiest way to do that is to subscribe to my channel or follow me on social media. Links for social media are always in the information section below the video. Feel free to leave your comments and feedback. Thanks for watching, guys, and take care.